Good morning, Collabcast listeners. This is Captain Dave Jackson coming to you from a very cloudy Hendersonville, Tennessee. Today, Nashville area. Today, we got a little overcast, but that's okay. We've had some serious heat. I know those of you in the eastern coast or so, eastern half of the U.S., have seen a lot of humidity and hot, super hot days this summer. And I have with me one of my guests who's right there on the coast, the Gulf Coast, and probably been sweating it out this summer. Bradley Flowers from Mobile, Alabama. Welcome, Bradley.
I was at Disney World last week and you could see the humidity in the air.
Oh, yeah, you can't even breathe. I
No,
mean,
not at all.
kids tolerate that, and they're sweating and they don't even know. But how do you do that as a parent in the middle of July? That's crazy.
You just deal with it, man. You just realize you're going to get all nasty and sweaty and you just deal with it.
And still jam packed, right? With
Yep.
people. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was funny. I tweeted this, we went to Disney in 2020 and they were all COVID conscious. I mean, if your
Yeah.
mask got a quarter of an inch below your nose, they would yell at you to pull it up. And
Oh,
then
I
on the
know.
flip side, that this time it was, please fill all available space. It was like the complete opposite. So
I was there in
I'm
2022. They wouldn't let the characters were on the ground. They had them up on balconies so you couldn't get close. Had to wear the
yep,
mask the whole bit. Yeah, it was crazy.
yep, yep.
Funny, funny. So Bradley is with Portal Insurance, as you can see in the background, if you're on video. And there you go. And Portal Insurance, interesting story. You got quite a story. Uh, and a lot of folks who are listening right now probably know a little bit of your story, but I like to focus on my guests' personal story, their career, their life track, their career track. And so let me start with you from the very beginning. So, are you a native Alabaman?
I am. I am.
And is
I
that
was
the right
born
term, Alabaman, or is it
Alab-
Alabamian?
Alabamian. However,
Alabamian.
some people will razz me for this. The town I grew up in was a town called Atmore, and the actual name for people from Atmore were Atmorons.
Oh, nice.
Literally, literally. I think some people try to get fancy and say Atmorian, but it's Atmoron.
Wow. So, do you
Yeah,
consider yourself a moron?
I do consider myself. It depends. Ask my wife.
Right.
Ask my wife. That
Right.
would be a question for her.
Most
Depends on
days.
if I remember to take the trash out or not.
Most days. Yeah, I got you. That's funny. So, high school, the whole bit, even college, Southern Alabama.
Yes, I went to high school. I had 28 people in my graduating class. There were 200 people in the entire school, K to 12th grade. It was a small private high school or small private school. I went
Private.
to Faulkner, not private in like a fancy sense, just it was just a private school. I went to it was a solid C student, CD student. My parents probably, if you like held a gun to their head and forced them to answer, they're probably still perplexed as to how I'm any kind of close to successful today based on how I did in school. But I was just not a good student. I almost treated school like a layover at the airport. I was just kind of transient, like I'm here till I don't have to be here anymore, basically. And
Mhm.
I went to college, Faulkner State Community College, which had a really good golf team. I played on the golf team there. Bubba Watson played at
Oh,
that
yeah.
college, and we had the same coach actually. The guy, he's still there.
Bubba had a good
Um,
run. I haven't seen him lately, but he did have a
he
pretty good
did.
run.
He's gotten older and had some injuries. He's close
Mm.
to 50. I think he's a lot older than people think, but he's maybe 45. But anyway, I went to Faulkner for 2 years. I played golf. I majored in eligibility. Those of you that
Perfect.
have done college athletics, you know what that means. And then
Mm.
went transferred to the University of South Alabama. Went to school to be a teacher because I would get summers off to play golf, which is not a good reason to go into teaching. Um, got a job with Liberty National Life part time. I do not recommend it. Selling life insurance. I made like 60 grand in my first 6 months, and I was in a class and I looked to my left and I looked to my right and I said, why the heck am I here? I just make double what a teacher makes starting salary in 6 months. Walked out of the classroom and didn't walk back in. So I officially dropped out of college to go full time in insurance. And I wish I'd have either finished or done it a few years earlier. So that's the short story.
So your first day in the insurance industry is with Liberty National Life.
Yep.
You answered an ad or knew someone? How'd you get into that?
I had a buddy that worked there and was a real good guy, good salesman, good businessman. And he basically talked me into it. And so growing up playing golf, the literal two people I knew that played the most golf were both insurance agents. And so that's kind of what attracted
and
me.
you admired
I was
that.
like, yeah, let's go. Now I'd never play golf, by the way. So I started with Liberty National. And then once I got there, I realized, like, wait a minute, I'm very competitive. That's what I liked about golf and sports, was the competitive aspect, competitive nature. I was like, wait a minute, this is like business, but I can also compete. Like sales is just as much of a sport as anything. And not only that, like I'm beating other agents, and you know what I mean? And so
sure.
I sort of fell in love with sales and business, and I liked being a professional. And so I worked for Liberty for a year, and it taught me a lot. I mean, eat what you kill, commission only, how to really sell life insurance. Would never go back there, but I would never recommend somebody start there. But I went to work for a State Farm agent because I wanted to learn P&C. I recognized, like, wait a minute, like if I go to the tallest building in Mobile, Alabama, every single car, building, structure I see is insured. Like everybody buys car insurance, everybody buys home insurance, every business owner buys business insurance. Not everybody buys life insurance. So if I can transition to P&C and figure out who my target client is, like literally everybody I know can be a customer. So I wanted to transition to P&C. So I sought out a State Farm agent. My starting salary there was $15,000 a year, plus like 3% commission. So I told you how much money I made at Liberty before. I took a big pay cut to do that, but I really wanted to learn. And I tell a lot of young people now, people that there tends to be this trend amongst young people that they think success is linear or your career is linear. In other words, you're just going to go up. Well, sometimes it looks like this. I took a huge pay cut.
Always looks like that.
I took a huge pay cut, but then propelled me forward. And I think it's the people that always just want to take a step forward are the ones that end up getting held back, So did that for a year, really learned how to sell P&C. Went to work for a company. From there, I went to work for a company called Alfa Insurance, which is Alabama's version of Farm Bureau. They're sort of semi-independent, semi-not. We wrote more brokered business than we did regular business.
But you're technically a career agent.
Yeah.
You have to write what they tell you to write.
Correct. And so I did that for 6.5 years, about 3 years too long. I tell people this. I think the thing that kept me there, Dave, was the production report they sent out that showed where you were amongst all the agents, because I like competing and beating everybody.
Okay, so I want to chime in on that because you mentioned State Farm. And so with my career, I was Allstate agent twice, 2 different states. And you're always number 2 in the market. State Farm was always the largest, 21% market share and Allstate 7. So that's how you compare. So you always felt like you're on the JV team. So I moved to Arizona from Omaha, Nebraska 15 years ago, and I had a chance to become a State Farm agent. So finally get to play on the varsity team, right? Put me in, coach. And so now I'm on the varsity team, and they put you into a sales district, 35 or so roughly, and you have a district manager, and you get your production reports, your sales reports weekly. They did it weekly, and they do it by product line, and they rank you 1 through 35. If you were number 35, oh my gosh, I'm telling you, you wanted to go hide that day every day that report
Yeah, but
came
if you're
out.
number one, you want everybody to see it.
Oh, you're out there. Yeah, if you're number one. So, I started scratch. I know you know what that's like. So I started scratch.
Uh-huh.
Well, when you're scratch, you have no clients. So all you're doing is new business production. So you're going to rank pretty high on those sales reports. You have to, because so I ranked consistently number four. I was on number three's tail, and I was like, yeah, I'm competitive too. And so most entrepreneurs are. And I'm like just trying to nip and catch number three. And uh it doesn't even matter with them, because I kept telling people after a year I went independent, and I kept telling people, forget the rankings. Okay. Why? Because number four doesn't even matter. State Farm cut me loose, kicked me to the curb after a year because I didn't sell enough in the other categories. So that was just their philosophy. And I was a little bit too much of a rebel, to be honest. So I wanted to do things my way. I wanted to be independent. But those reports would keep you, like I said, all I'm focused on, and my team is, let's catch number three this week, and
Yeah.
move up to three. Then we can move up to two, and we'll be at one at some point soon.
Well,
But
those reports kept me there, man. They
yeah,
did for
yeah.
probably 3 years. And see,
Oh, I can totally relate.
I got on social media big time in 2015 before anybody else was really in this area was using social media for business in an insurance sense. Well, I was this like young whippersnapper that was full of piss and vinegar, and it rubbed a lot of the older agents the wrong way. Like I made some enemies there just because if you've ever been and some of you listeners probably know this, if you've ever been in an industry and you're the first to do something and it works, you pick up some haters along the way.
Oh,
And
100%.
especially if it's so different than the status quo. And what I was doing was so different than the status quo. And not only that, corporate liked what I was doing. So they pumped me, and so I had built up some enemies there. So that just added fuel to the fire of me wanting to kick everybody's butt. It was like, it kept me there. And then finally I realized, like, wait a minute, the person you're really competing with is yourself.
Right. We all know
And
that. Yeah.
and that's on this independent side. Of course, we have some carriers that send out reports and stuff. I always like to send them back to Scott when we're ahead of him. But yeah, it's very very vain. It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. But I do like, I saw that subtle thing there. I do like how whenever you get a chance, you get a dig on Scott. He's probably your best friend, I know. So whenever I can get a dig on Scott, Bradley's going to take
So
it.
both Scott and I have we're both appointed with Allstate. We both have the Allstate independent
So
contract.
Bradley, for those of you who don't or listening don't know, Bradley is talking about Scott Howell. Scott's located where? I protect
He's I protect. He's in Huntsville, so I'm at the bottom of the
Huntsville.
state of Alabama. He's at the very
Yeah,
top.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll
But
be
he
driving through Huntsville tomorrow.
oh wait, really?
Yep.
Yeah, we both have Allstate, and Allstate does send out a production report, which makes sense because they're captive. So that's
They're
kind of part of their
hybrid.
culture.
Yeah. Yep.
And so one time they sent out a report, and uh, Allstate's just not competitive in Alabama, and Scott and I was one policy ahead of Scott. He had one, and I had two. And we were both at the bottom of and I sent it to him like, "Step up your game next time, dude.
Yeah.
We beat you by double."
That's good. So that brings me to my next question. You've known Scott for how long?
Scott and I met in 2017, I think.
How'd that happen?
Snapchat, actually.
What?
Yeah. So the short story is actually down the street from my office here is an Irish pub called Callahan's. It's number one burger in the state of Alabama every single year. They do a St. Patrick's Day party, and there'll be 5,000 people out here. They have concert stages and stuff, and it's a real fun time. I ran an ad on Snapchat a few years ago during that party that we picked some business up from. This was when I was captive. And I wrote a blog post about it, about how my ROI on that ad was like 300%. So I wrote a blog post how I got 300% ROI on Snapchat. That article was picked up by lifehealthpro.com, which was is now thinkadvisor.com. It's like it's sort of like Insurance Journal, but just for life and health agents. And that article was published there. I think it's still out there. And from there, I got a phone call from the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal is doing a piece on insurance agents and financial advisors using alternative forms of advertising. And I asked them during that interview, I was like, well, how many insurance agents do you have using Snapchat? And they said, as far as the Wall Street Journal is concerned, you're the number one insurance agent on Snapchat. Ha, 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 ha. And I was like, hang on a second.
And the only one.
I was the only one.
Yeah.
And I said, hang on a second. I'm going to go put that in my bio. So I put that on my social bio. I was like, you said it, kind of as a joke. Well, Scott saw that, added me on Snapchat. We started talking. He happened to be vacationing down here, swung by my office. He was like, hey, I wasn't doing a ton of content back then. This was before doing content was cool and nobody else wanted to do it. And he was like, hey, you want to do a piece of content? Sure. He had a little video series he was doing at the time. It's still out there on YouTube. He and I sat down in my office at my captive agency and we did a little, 30-minute blurb where we were just talking about the industry and things. And at the end of it, he was like, we should do a podcast. I was like, if you pay for it, I'll do it. And so that's kind of how it happened. And we're so different in some of our philosophies and personality that it works, but we also align on very important things too. And it just works. Like, I don't know a better partnership than he and I in that regard. Mm-hmm. And coincidentally, that day that we shot that first video was, I think, 2 days before I proposed to my wife. So I told him about that I was going to do that. So we like a lot of like really good life things happen just all at once, Mm-hmm. And then, through the podcast, meeting people like yourself and other folks in IAOA and other industry verticals sort of gave me the stones to leave and open my own agency. And so that's we ended up opening Portal in January of 2019. So
whose idea was it to start Insurance Guys podcast?
It was Scott. He was the one that wanted to do it. Podcasting
was it always
at that
the
time,
two of you? Was it always going to be the two of you? Just start
Uh-huh.
it and continue it? Okay.
Yeah, he started it. He named it. Podcasting was the only vertical in social media that I hadn't done. So I just sort of did it to check the box. What ended up happening is we realized, like, wait a minute. So like take Troy Korsgaden, for example.
Right.
Legend in the insurance space. I actually had lunch with him. I actually had lunch with him yesterday. He's here in town.
Yep. Uh-huh.
If I reach out to Troy and say, hey, I would love 30 minutes of your time, he may or may not say yes. He's probably going to say no, right? People that are very busy, very important, tend to not say yes to things. But if I say, hey, I want to interview you on my podcast, it greatly increases the chance that people say yes. And so we sort of used the podcast to just get in front of people that we wanted to know. You know what I mean?
Like who? Industry folks? Nothing really to do with writing insurance business.
No, just like people to learn from. We brought people on selfishly. And so, but because of that, people started listening and things really clicked a year later. A year later was when we were kind of like, okay, whoa, this is actually going somewhere. But the intent was always very pure. It was just to do it for the sake of do it. You know what I mean? We never had this vision of like building this big thing and like getting all these industry connections and equity and companies and all. Like we never like that. I would love to say it was this big grand plan and it worked. It just kind of happened,
Right. So again, for those of you who are listening and don't know, Bradley is co-host with Scott on Insurance Guys podcast, and you guys are up to closing in on like episode number 300 or so.
We're getting close. We're very close to 1 million all-time downloads.
Right. So that give you an idea. Those of you who don't know, give you an idea. You've been at this now for what? Over 5 years?
6 years this November.
So both of you started this before you were independent agents.
Correct. We were both captive.
Right.
Scott was sort of semi-independent because Nationwide allowed them to get direct appointments on the commercial side a few years before Nationwide pulled the ripcord.
Right.
And I wrote some independent business, so we were familiar enough. But really, Dave, the reason we interviewed independent agents is they were the ones most willing to share.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's not a culture of sharing on the captive side of the industry.
No.
And even if someone wants to
35.
share, yeah, and even if someone wants to share, they're always scared, like, what's corporate going to think? You know,
100%.
So it's that was why we interviewed like Chris Paradiso and Brandon Smith and Matt and Zach with GNN Insurance, and Steve Holly. Steve Holly is a big, you know, I love Steve Holly.
Number one IAOA
number one,
member.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
I think he said that on our show, you know, so these guys were just more willing to share. So that's why we went that route. And then, you know, for me, it was learning about all these cool things that you could do in the industry, and my captive carrier not letting me do it. So I was like, well, screw it. I'd rather make less money in the beginning and be able to implement the things I want to implement than be dealt with corporate red tape, you know?
Sure. So, no plans to discontinue Insurance Guys podcast, right? That's going to go on as long as it can, as long as it lives.
At this point, we've got it systematized. It's, you know, it is a business. It's the easiest business I have. All we have to do is record. Everything else happens after the fact. But yeah, no, it's Scott said from the beginning we wouldn't stop till we got to 5,000 episodes. So
5,000.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny.
That's retirement age, you know.
Yeah, I have definitely done the math on that.
I'll bet.
It's funny if you look at the math on how to get your podcast in the top 1% of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
You do more than 62 episodes.
That's all it takes.
You just don't stop like that. Most people start it and they think it's going to be easy, and it's not in the beginning. And
why is that? Why is it not?
It's a high barrier to entry. You know, if you don't have a service you're using to edit and publish and that sort of thing, you have to have some technical knowledge. You got to be good on audio. You've got to ask good questions. You've got to be a bit entertaining and informational. And, you know, for me, a lot of people don't know this. So I actually had a radio show in high school that I did. There was a local radio station, and they had a show once a week. I think it was on Wednesdays, called High School Today, where they would bring in a representative from each of the high schools in the area and do like hey, this is what's going on, that sort of thing. So I had done that really young, so I had a little bit of experience in that, you know, so you have to be good too, you know. But I think most people just get in it and they think they're going to pick up 1 million subscribers, and they don't. You know, one story I like to tell is Heath Sharon started his podcast,
Insurance Town.
Yeah, he called me. He was a month in, and he called me freaking out because he only got 200 downloads.
Oh my gosh. You're lucky to get two in the first month.
And I was like, bro, I hit him with all my normal stuff. And I was like, look, you know, that's 200 people that care about what you like. Imagine putting 200 people in a room and every one of them's there. That's a lot of people. You'd be overwhelmed with that. Like, and it just wasn't getting through. And so finally I said, hang on a second. So I pull up Libsyn on my computer, and that's where we got our stats from at the time. And I had never even looked at this. I said, do you know how many downloads the Insurance Guys podcast got in the first 30 days? And he said, like 1,000. I said 8.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
We got 8
Yeah.
downloads, and 3 of them were probably by my mom listening multiple times, and the other 2 were me. And he says, "I'll shut up." And I said, "That's exactly what you do. Just if I had been paying attention to those stats in the beginning, I would have stopped too, probably."
Yeah.
You gotta. I tell people, when you start a podcast, commit to 50 episodes, commit to 1 year, 52 weeks. And then, something funny happens with those algorithms at 50 weeks. They start ranking your show a little higher. You got to do that. You can't, this isn't a do 3 episodes and all of a sudden you're famous kind of thing. It's not a do 300 episodes and you're famous.
Probably not. No.
And the fact of the matter is, Dave, like, yeah, we make money from the podcast. We get a lot of industry connections that benefit our insurance agencies from the podcast. But if none of that happened, we would still be doing it. We do it because we like doing it, not because we have to or want to pay the bills or something like that.
Yeah. Same thing I told several people when I brought Collabcast back for IAOA. I'm not taking on a sponsor. Don't want to sponsor. I mean, maybe someday, but not starting out. With my position, I could ask. I have a couple hundred folks I could go ask. With the connections I have, but that's not what it's about. We're not making money. I'm spending money, and it's all about helping the agents who are listening be better insurance agents. And, folks like you are generous enough with your time, especially like you said, on the independent side, that they want to share, and they're willing to give back because for whatever reason, the culture, like you said, is different than the captive world and the State Farm agents. And I only say that because I was one. I'm not being critical. I was one for a short time. And, we're not looking to, I committed to 2 years. So we're going to go 100 episodes and see where that takes us. And I don't mind going for 10 years, and I'm 65 years old right now. So that would make me 75, still going on with an episode in a single industry where independent agents, a single niche within that industry. So it's pretty focused, right? And that's just how committed I am to our side of our side of the business. So, Collabcast is in it for the long haul. We're only at 25 episodes or so now. So I appreciate you coming on to help us launch basically and get us, through the first so many episodes. We'll for sure having you and Scott on together at some point. So
definitely should.
So tell me, I know by reading your bio that for Insurance Guys podcast, you were able to secure, and you even did a video, but I'll be honest, I have to admit I didn't listen to it. How you got Gary V on the show. I saw that you have that as a video on YouTube, but I didn't watch that part yet. So give us the 2-minute synopsis of how that happened.
So I reached out to a friend of mine who's very well connected here in town. He got in touch with the Senior Bowl people. We had lunch. They're like, yeah, we would love to do this. Have you guys run it? So basically through that, we got Gary to Mobile to speak for free 2 years in a row at our conference in exchange for the relationship with the Senior Bowl. In addition, I got asked to speak at Gary's conference in Miami around the same time. It was actually the week before the Senior Bowl. So I had these kind of 2 things going on where I was in his circle. And then it was kind of funny. This is a good lesson. So we got to have dinner with Gary the night before the Senior Bowl here in Mobile, and had a great conversation. Did not ask him to come on my podcast. And I had a friend that was like, why wouldn't you ask him to come on your podcast? And I was like, because it's more important to me that he knows who I am than me pitch him on my podcast and him possibly say yes. And then coincidentally, 6 months later, it happened. So just through those interactions, we were able to get in front of the right people to make it happen, basically, is the long story short. But it was, I tell agents all the time, when you go into whether it's a referral partner or whether it's a potential commercial client or anything, go into the exchange, go into the interaction, go into the lunch, the coffee, whatever, with the intention of building a relationship.
Right.
Anything else that happens after that is gravy, but you have to go in with the intention that, and that's how we handled that interaction. My intention was to build a relationship. It was not to get somebody on my podcast. And I think it's a good analogy for real life as well. You know,
No question. Yep. Without a self-centered motive.
right. And
Yep.
if you have if you have an ulterior motive, they're going to be able to tell.
Oh, comes right out. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
And that'll shoot yourself in the foot every time. So
For
some
sure.
other couple things I want to talk to you about before we run out of time, because we could talk for hours, and you're such a great storyteller. Have you always been like that?
I don't know, man.
I'm long.
I appreciate you saying that, but I have no idea.
You are, I'll tell you that. You know, people just are engaged to listen to your story. I'm a storyteller, but I have the same answer to the question. I don't know if I'm good at it. I just know that I can do it. Like I could talk all day long, and it sounds like rambling to me, but some people are like, no, it's cool. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. So how long's your wife been a State Farm agent?
She started in either 2017 or 2018.
So did you meet while you're both in the insurance industry?
So she was my next door competitor. When I was at Alfa, her State Farm office, she was opening up next door.
Okay.
And I reached out to her, thinking like, hey, if we're going to compete with each other, we might as well be friendly.
Right.
So that's kind of how it happened. Like,
Gotcha.
you know, we became friends, and then more than friends. And then, but it was kind of funny. I told a story yesterday to Troy. We kind of kept our relationship on the down low for a little while. And then all of a sudden we were engaged. A lot of people found out we were dating when we got engaged. And so it was like talk of the town, so to speak, you know, a little bit like, oh, there's two people, you know, we're both on chamber boards, competitors, all this kind of stuff. So that was kind of a funny little thing with that.
So do you hear people say, oh, Bradley's got it made in the shade because he's got all these leads coming in from his wife's agency because they're things that State Farm doesn't have an appetite for. And so it's just almost like, you know, built-in lead pipeline. You hear that?
I don't hear that, but I know people say that. I'm empathetic to the fact that people are going to think that. But if you know my wife, you know she is a rule follower to the umpteenth degree, and she does referrals the right way and refers multiple people and probably refers more stuff to other agents than she does us, or than her office does us. The other thing is a lot of the State Farm's pretty competitive in Alabama, always have been.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff they can't write, we don't want, because we don't do non-standard auto. We don't do, we don't do contractors or anything like that. So most of the stuff they can't do is not a fit for us either. Do we get some nice commercial leads sometimes? Yeah, sure. But I'm also competing with other agents because they're not just referring to us.
Okay. So Portal has been around since March of 19, correct?
Correct. March
so
the 1st.
You are almost 4.5 years old. Give us an idea of Portal. Like, where are you at in terms of split of business, mix between personal, commercial, size, revenue, premium, employees, whatever you want to share?
Yeah. So we are 4.5 years old. We're split pretty even 50-50 down the middle, commercial, personal.
Okay.
A lot of people like to knock on personal lines. We'll always do personal lines. We are really good at it. We almost exclusively operate in the mortgage lender referral space on the personal line side. We don't do many, hey, I'm swapping insurance or I'm trying to get a quote situation. It's mostly new purchases. We modeled our process after Matt and Zach with GNN Insurance. I flew up to Boston.
Those that don't know, it's Bobble On. So here, let me show you how that works.
Oh yeah, you got your bobblehead. You know, I never got bobbled.
What?
Never
You're
got
kidding.
it. No,
So
never got it.
So
I think
Matt,
they stopped doing it around the time I came along.
Yeah, they did. But they presented this to me at our IAOA Innovation Conference. in San Diego on stage. And so their thing is they go to social media, they target a mortgage lender, an individual that they're really wanting to get referrals from, and they go and look at their images, photos on Facebook or wherever, and LinkedIn, and they have a personalized bobblehead, and they ship it to them, mail it to them with a card. Hey, we want to set up a time to meet. That's their whole thing. Bobble on is what it was called, and it just rocked the world, So great.
Yeah,
Built great relationships.
They did a good job. I flew up to Boston, and their process is a lot more in depth than just the bobbleheads. We actually didn't adopt the bobblehead piece of it. We made one bobblehead for a lender, and then I was like, yeah, we're not going to do that. But I flew up to Boston for a 4-hour meeting and flew back to Alabama just to learn their process. And so we sort of modeled our personalized process after those guys. I owe a lot to Matt and Zach, and Matt and I talk almost once a week. We're involved in a couple projects together, but and then on the commercial side, we do trucking and habitational. I'd like to joke and say we like to make things difficult.
Right.
We operate pretty much in the entire Southeast except Florida. We're licensed in Florida, have some Florida business, but we don't specifically target Florida. We have 12 employees. I like to measure our size by employees, not from an ego standpoint, just from hey, these are 12 souls that portals feeding their families.
Right.
And our goal, we're not trying to build the typical Main Street insurance agency. Our goal is to build a big national agency. That's why we named it Portal and not Bradley Flowers Insurance or Mobile Bay Insurance or something like that. And, our mission is sort of to redefine the way insurance agencies are operated in every sense of the word. And so yeah, that's us in a nutshell.
Cool. So operating in how many states right now?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you. We're licensed in probably 30 states.
Okay.
Operating heavily as far as like targeting and writing business in 4: Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and Tennessee. We have 2 offices. We have 1 office in Alabama, 1 office in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, cool. A couple other things I want to ask you about. Tell me about making the donuts.
Yeah, so we started Making the Donuts, which is a YouTube series / vlog to essentially document things going on in the agency. A story I like to tell that I sound like a broken record telling it now, but me and my wife went to the Jack Daniel's distillery not far from where you are right now. Mm-hmm. And they took us through the whole process of how they make the whiskey and told you really like how it was made, and why it was made and that sort of thing. And at the end, later that night, we met up with some friends who had been there earlier that day, not at the same time as us. And my buddy's like, do you just want to like pound some Jack Daniels right now? And I was like, I kind of do. And it hit me because I knew the story and how it was made. It made me want it. And so Making the Donuts, which we're not doing as regular as we were a few years ago. I had a full-time videographer on staff, and I don't anymore. I just use contract guys now. But that vlog was just sort of to tell the story and the behind the scenes of the agency from a marketing standpoint, similar to the Jack Daniels thing, but also I thought it'd be really cool for my kids and grandkids to go back and watch one day. Mm-hmm. If we pull this off and do this the way I want to do it, like, my kids and grandkids will see the financial benefit of that and they'll hopefully want to watch it. And maybe they won't care, who knows. But it worked. I mean, we've had customers that have called here or prospects called here to switch their insurance because they saw Kenneth on there and liked Kenneth's persona, and and then we've had one story I like to tell is we had a carrier rep knock on our door, and she came in and said, I'm a carrier rep with such and such carrier. I'm a huge fan of Making the Donuts, and I want to appoint your agency. And if you've ever started a scratch agency, you know how hard some of those carrier appointments are to come by. So
right.
That's that in a nutshell. We still do it. It's just not, for a while there it was every single week. I probably do 2 to 3 a year now. It's just to kind of tell the story, tell the behind the scenes, that sort of thing.
Okay. So you've got your irons in the fire in a lot of different ways. Tell us about Top Dog.
Yeah, so Top Dog Pet Insurance, our friend Aaron Farmer out of California came to me a few years ago with an opportunity to start a pet insurance MGA / carrier.
Mm-hmm.
And we discovered a few things when we looked at pet insurance. One, most carriers don't make it really easy for agents to buy or sell pet insurance. And additionally, a lot of the commissions were really low, 8 to 10%, that sort of thing. So those were the two things we wanted to solve for. So basically, what we did with Top Dog is we built a really, it's not exactly where I think it should be, but it's 85-90% of the way there. Allows agents a really clean UX to sell pet insurance to their customers. That I think a lot of people are scared to sell pet insurance similar to cybers because they don't really know all the components. We make it really easy to know all the components and learn, and the platform is very self-explanatory. And then additionally, we also give them a custom branded link that they can send to their customer, and the customer buy it in like a direct to consumer sense. So like at Portal, we have it built into our customer onboarding, and we ask them if they have a pet. They say yes. It sends them the Top Dog link, and it's like, hey, you can insure your pet here. And then our commissions are higher than pretty much every other Safeco auto owners or anyone like that that's selling pet insurance. And then the other thing too is, if you want a better personalized client, dirtbags don't buy pet insurance.
Right.
If you don't, somebody that's buying insurance on their pet is probably a good person.
They care.
Yes,
about
correct.
their pet.
Correct. They take care of business, take care of their stuff. So that's another thing too. So, I don't spend as much time there as I want to or probably should, but it's a fun little project to be involved in. So and Aaron's a great guy. Anything I can do with Aaron Farmer, if you guys don't know Aaron Farmer, reach out to Aaron. He's an awesome dude.
Yep, he is. I want to touch on one last thing, and then we'll hit Innovation 23, where you'll be speaking in October for us on stage. But has it been launched yet, or can you say One City World Tour for 24?
Has not been announced yet. So we'll put a dog ear in that.
So does that mean there will be one?
It's up in the air. It's up in the air.
Yeah, I'm not going to press you. So Bradley,
it's not everybody's Dave Jackson and can put these phenomenal events on. It's hard to put events on.
It's a challenge. It is.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more of a challenge. I will say that. The hard market we're working in right now is making any kind of business in our industry difficult. Just is from every angle. So just is. Good, bad, or the ugly. That's how it is. So Innovation 23 is IAOA's annual conference. This year's in October in Chicago, the Marriott Marquis. Bradley spoke for us on the stage in Nashville last year, the Gaylord Opryland. And what I did, I haven't ever published this, but I'm going to say it right now. We sent out surveys to all the attendees, and we get, hundreds of them back. And you get a ranking, a 1 through 5 star ranking. And so what I did was I invited the top 3 back, and you were one of the top 3 from Nashville. And that's how you got invited back. So if you were a speaker in Nashville and you didn't get invited back, it wasn't my call. It was the survey results. So, and that's honest to God true. So,
it's humbling for my peers to have done that, because I'm not a professionally trained speaker. No. I just get up there and talk about what we do in our agency.
We're insurance agents. Almost none of us are professional speakers. But here's the beauty of it. And I tell, when we get together for our first speaker meeting at the conference, I tell everyone, I can't thank you enough for being here. Many of you are speakers, part-time at least, and you demand a speaker fee, and we don't pay that. You come at your own accord. We give you a free ticket. Otherwise, your costs are yours, and you do it because you're giving back to your peers. And that's just an unbelievable, tremendous thing. Selfless act of kindness, and that's that's why people keep coming back, because the ideas and information you have to share are outstanding, and you do it from the bottom of your heart and for no other reason, not because you're paid to be there. So that's a very cool thing. And that's part of our format since year one. I don't see us changing that, but so you're coming back to Chicago. Give us a glimpse of what you're going to be talking about in a couple of months.
Yeah, so I can do it in just a few seconds. So the way I run my agency is sort of the opposite of the way a lot of agencies are run. A lot of agencies are run from the bottom up. In other words, the agency owner is the bottleneck for everything. And I think that, everything has to run through the agency owner. Maybe the agency owner is the top salesperson, that sort of thing. And I think that can be done for a little while, but then it gets really hard to scale your agency if you are the bottleneck for everything. So I run my agency from the top down. I almost run it like a holding company. I'm not in the day to day. I have people in place and that sort of thing, and don't very much get involved in the weeds. Usually, if I'm involved in a customer, it's because something's really, really bad. And there's a ton of positives of that. Stress, being able to take off. I took 2 months off when my son was born. Didn't have social media, email, or anything on my phone. Attended no meetings at the agency, and everything still ran like a top because of the awesome people I have in place. So my presentation is titled "Go Fire Yourself," and it's basically, I'm going to take you guys step by step of how, because my agency didn't start out that way. I started out as the top salesperson, of how we transition from an agency owner first culture to an agency owner last culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we almost got a little edgy with the title and say "Go F yourself," but it was "Go Fire Yourself."
Yeah,
we're in a PC type industry, so we'll keep it that way. I'm good with it, but but it is what it is. So,
I might have added a slide in with that on there just to poke fun. So
spilling the tea. Okay. So I appreciate you, Bradley, for coming on with us today. Our listeners, as always, love to hear your wisdom. You're a great storyteller. For some reason, you've got this knack of just taking ideas and making them come to life. And we admire that about you. So thank you for sharing what you do. Absolutely. So once again, we've had Bradley Flowers from Portal Insurance in Mobile, Alabama as our guest today. And we want to thank all of you. If you're listening, you're hearing this just a few weeks out from our conference in Chicago, Illinois on October 4, 5, 6, and 7. So go to IAOA.com if you're interested in attending our conference. It's for IAOA members only, and you can bring a guest, and that's it. We're not wide open to the industry. We don't allow, captive agents. Obviously, they're not members of our group. We don't allow carrier personnel unless you're an exhibitor. We don't allow third party. We don't allow staff. So we keep it to the agency principals / owners / partners, those who have an ownership stake in their agency. And that seems to be what makes the secret sauce go. So, and like I said before, Bradley, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom. We'll see you early October. Thanks again.
Thanks, Dave.
You bet. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Collabcast with IAOA with Captain Dave Jackson. Production and distribution by Podsquad.fm, Riverside.fm, and Spotify for podcasters. Special thanks to Little Dog Social Media, Terry Champion, and all our guests and listeners. If you're an independent insurance agency owner, please subscribe to our podcast weekly. You can also request to join our agency owner exclusive Facebook group, IAOA, or Insurance Agency Owners Alliance at IAOA.com. Captain Dave Jackson signs out from sunny Hendersonville, Tennessee.